Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The Biden administration's unveiled plans to withdraw U.S. troops from Afghanistan by September 11th, the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. The move would end the longest war in U.S. history. Over the past 2 decades, the war has killed more than 100,000 Afghan civilians, 2,300 U.S. service members, and has cost the U.S. trillions of dollars. NATO forces are also expected to withdraw 7,000 troops by September 11th. This is White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been consistent in his view that there's not a military solution to Afghanistan, that we have been there for far too long.
The White House announcement comes just over a week before the scheduled start of a new round of peace talks in Istanbul between the Taliban and the U.S.-backed Afghan government. But on Tuesday, the Taliban announced it would boycott the talks because President Biden is reneging on a deal made by Trump to have all U.S. troops out by May 1st. We'll have more on Afghanistan after headlines. In Minnesota, protesters took to the streets for a third straight night in Brooklyn Center, where a white police officer killed 20-year-old Dante Wright, a black man, during a traffic stop Sunday. Police fired projectiles into a demonstration in front of the Brooklyn Center police station, declaring it unlawful, and ordered reporters to leave. Kim Potter, the officer who killed Dante Wright, and the city's police chief, Tim Gannon, both resigned Tuesday amidst mounting anger. Potter was also an officer trainer. Dante's aunt, Naisha Wright, responded to the news of her resignation during a joint news conference with the family of George Floyd.
She was the law. She was the law, right? Protect and serve.
Okay.
Put her in jail. Yes. Like they would do any one of us. Yes.
Naisha Wright also revealed George Floyd's girlfriend was her nephew's former teacher. Philonise Floyd, the brother of George Floyd, also spoke at the news conference.
Minneapolis, you all can't sweep this under the rug anymore. We're here. And we will fight for justice for this family, just like we're fighting for our brother. Yeah. To the protesters all around this nation.
Barry Broad, a former police officer and so-called use of force expert, who argued Chauvin was acting, quote, with objective reasonableness when he kneeled on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, leading to his death. New body cam footage was also shown to the jury of Floyd sitting handcuffed and giving his name and birth date to Minneapolis police officer Peter Chang, among the first officers to arrive at the scene before Chauvin. Talks are set to resume in Vienna today between the U.S., Iran, and other parties to the landmark 2015 nuclear deal, just days after an attack on the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran. Iran is blaming the attack on Israel, which is staunchly opposed to relaunching the international accord. Iran said Tuesday it will ramp up its uranium enrichment efforts following the attack. The Biden administration is moving ahead with more than $23 billion in weapons sales to the United Arab Emirates after reviewing a deal made under President Trump. The deal includes the sale of Lockheed Martin F-35 jets and armed drones. Anti-war groups and progressive lawmakers have called for the U.S. to stop all arms sales to the UAE over its involvement in the Saudi-led U.S.-backed war in Yemen. Ukraine says 40,000 Russian troops have amassed on its eastern border, prompting some to warn Russia could be preparing for war. Another 40,000 troops are annexed Crimea. But others say Russia is sending its soldiers to the region as a show of force and intimidation to Ukraine and its allies. The U.S. and NATO have vowed to support Ukraine, though it's not a member of the alliance. Analysts also say Russia could be seeking a
caféine, il me
distraction
donne
from
mal à la
domestic
gorge. Hein.
issues, including the imprisonment
Pense
of
le
Alexei
café.
Navalny. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said Tuesday the U.S.
Parlant de
military
café, je vais
will
m'en faire un.
increase its
Vu
presence
qu'on
in
va trader.
Germany, a reversal from the Trump administration's plans to withdraw troops. Austin said the move reaffirms U.S. support to NATO and, quote, improves our ability to surge forces at a moment's notice to defend our allies, he said. President Biden sent an unofficial delegation of former government officials and former lawmakers to Taiwan 2 days after Taipei said China sent 25 warplanes into its air defense zone. China has been increasing military drills around Taiwan and warned the U.S. against intervening in the territory over which it claims sovereignty. In Burkina Faso, authorities have charged exiled former President Blaise Compaoré with the murder of Thomas Sankara, who was killed in a 1987 coup. Sankara was a revered leader and anti-colonialist Marxist who enacted popular social programs and was dubbed the African Che Guevara. Compaoré succeeded Sankara, his one-time close friend, and was eventually ousted decades later in a popular uprising in 2014. He will be tried in absentia. The Guardian reports Facebook knew President Juan Orlando Hernandez was using thousands of fake Facebook accounts to make his
la plus nice
campaign
insulte que je me fais dire.
and let him get away with it for nearly 1 year after the company was alerted to the activity.
Finalement,
Facebook reportedly
genre...
learned what was happening in 2018 with posts on Hernandez's page receiving engagement from tens of thousands of fake accounts. But Facebook took no action until the following year, even though it violated Facebook policy. Hernandez, a key U.S. ally, has long been accused of spreading misinformation online to discredit his critics and undermine social movements. In coronavirus news, the European rollout of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been delayed after regulators here in the United States moved to temporarily halt its use as reports of extremely rare blood clots were being investigated. South Africa also suspended its use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. 6 women, aged 18 to 48, reported the clots after receiving the shot, and 1 has died. The number represents less than 1 in a million administered J&J shots in the United States, and it's not yet known if the condition is linked to the vaccine. What is known is the standard treatment of blood clots, heparin, is contraindicated for this reaction. President Biden sought to reassure the public the pause in J&J's use would not hamper the White House's vaccination goals.
So there's enough vaccine that is basically 100% unquestionable for every single solitary American.
India is fast-tracking the approval of foreign-made vaccines as it reported yet another record daily caseload of 184,000 infections Wednesday. Mumbai and the state of Maharashtra is going into a full 2-week lockdown.
This disease is spreading at a horrifying pace. I say horrifying because today's numbers of positive cases in the state is the highest so far. Nearly 60,212 COVID-19 positive cases have been reported in the state today. Hence, the situation is very grim.
In other coronavirus news, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling on governments to impose a wealth tax on rich people
j'avais ma carte de chasseur, là. Ils ont fuck up mes dates, ils ont dit que j'étais né le 7 mars. Fait que moi, je suis né le 03, genre le 3 juillet, fait que c'est 03-07. Eux, ils ont inversé les deux. Fait que là, il était genre, ouais, dans le fond, on modifie ça dans ton dossier, puis dans le fond, ta carte est pas bonne. Puis après ton cours de maniement, ben, tu vas avoir la nouvelle avec tous tes chill. Là, genre, j'étais comme, OK. Genre, OK. OK. Genre, j'ai pas été à la chasse à l'arc avec cette carte-là, man. Ouais. J'aurais été dans la merde en tabarnak, man.
An ally of embattled Florida Congressmember Matt Gaetz is reportedly cooperating with the Justice Department in its probe into Gaetz' possible sex trafficking crimes. Joel Greenberg, a former Florida county tax collector who's himself been indicted for sex trafficking, told investigators he and Gaetz gave cash or gifts to women in exchange for sex. This according to a New York Times report. The House Ethics Committee recently launched its own investigation into Congressman Gaetz, a well-known Trump ally.
J'ai pas grand profit, là. J'ai juste fait 75 piastres.
Robert Santos to head the U.S. Census Bureau. Santos is president of the American Statistical Association. Santos, who is a Mexican-American, would become the agency's first permanent director of color. If confirmed, Santos would fill the term of Trump appointee Steve Dillingham.
Je sais, puis je t'écoute. Le truc, c'est que je voulais trader avec un peu plus de capital, c'est juste ça.
Inaccurate report on undocumented residents. In reproductive rights news, the Food and Drug Administration will allow providers to mail abortion pills to people who choose to terminate an early-stage pregnancy without surgery for the duration of the pandemic. The move was welcomed by medical groups that had been fighting a January ruling by the Supreme Court, which sided with the Trump administration in enforcing the in-person requirement, even after a federal judge waived it in order to spare patients unnecessary travel during the pandemic. Wisconsin is on track for a devastating wildfire season, as hundreds of blazes have already caused destruction comparable to the whole of 2020 in just 4 months. Tony Evers, the Wisconsin governor, declared a state of emergency last week. Climate groups say wildfires are likely to get worse in Wisconsin due to increasing droughts and heat waves. And New York announced it'll become the first U.S. state to divest its pension fund from tar sands companies. Divest New York coalition said, quote, "It's wrong to be invested in companies that are destroying the planet, and it's also financially unwise, considering that the world is transitioning to renewables, which is causing fossil fuel values to steadily decline." And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report.
Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. You are watching NBC News Now. New concerns about one of the COVID vaccines today. The FDA and CDC pausing Johnson & Johnson's coronavirus shot. The issue, 6 women developed blood clots after getting the J&J shot. One of them died. So how could this affect the COVID vaccine rollout? Here's White House COVID response coordinator Jeff Zients.
Let me start by saying that this announcement will not have a significant impact on our vaccination program. The J&J vaccine makes up less than 5% of the more than 190 million recorded shots in arms in the United States to date.
In Minneapolis, the prosecution in the Derek Chauvin murder trial resting its case, the defense calling its first witness, a former Minneapolis police officer who testified about George Floyd's drug-related arrest back in 2019.
The passenger was unresponsive and non-compliant to my commands. I then had to physically reach in because I wanted to see his hands, because I couldn't see his hands. I reached in finally and grabbed his hand to put it up on the dash, and then that individual was taken from the vehicle and handcuffed.
And in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, Dante Wright's family joining the Floyds and their attorney to demand justice.
10 miles from where the Chauvin trial regarding George Floyd was taking place, that a police officer would shoot and kill another unarmed black man. Listen, it's something that if you told me and I didn't see little Dante's face and his mother grandmother crying. I wouldn't believe it.
We start this evening with NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis. She is outside the Javits Center, which is a mass vaccination site in New York City. Rahema, New York has pulled the Johnson & Johnson vaccine from its state vaccination sites, including the Javits there. So what happens to people who had J&J vaccine appointments today? And what about people with J&J appointments at city-run sites?
Hey there, Allison. I'm going to start with the last question first. And those who had J&J vaccinations at city-run sites, the city is now saying that those folks are going to be notified that their appointments are going to be rescheduled. And perhaps that means they're going to be rescheduled to get a Pfizer or a Moderna, or rescheduled if and when the J&J vaccination becomes available again. But they have to wait for that rescheduling. Okay. As for what happens here at the Javits Center, this is run by the state. They're saying at the Javits Center you can come in and get a vaccination. But for people who woke up this morning with plans to come here and get it, and they heard that there was a pause in the J&J vaccination, it caused them a bit of concern. Listen to what one woman told me who came here for that J&J vaccination, and she didn't get that, but she did get something. Take a listen.
Well, they should have figured this out a long time ago before they let it go out there, you know, because it's getting a lot of people, and a lot of people are not going to get it. My family had appointments today. They all canceled for the J&J. So I came here. I said, you know what, let me go because I think they're not going to give the Johnson & Johnson, so I might get the Pfizer. And that's what happened. I got the Pfizer.
So she got the Pfizer shot, and she told me that she was very pleased with that because she had made up her mind that she was going to be vaccinated today, and indeed she was able to get that. But she wishes that there had been a little bit of advance notice about how this was all going to play out, Allison.
That is a committed person, but I can certainly understand her concern when you think you're going to get one thing and that changes at the last minute. Let me ask you about how this pause sets back the vaccination effort overall. I mean, it certainly can't help some of the supply issues we've seen along the way.
Well, it's a big concern because there is some vaccination hesitancy across the country as well. And so when some people hear that there is a pause in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because of this concern about what they're seeing of 6 women who have developed blood clots, for those who are hesitant, it may give them more reason to be hesitant. But Dr. Fauci was asked this question. He responded to it somewhat during a news conference today. Take a listen to what he said about the pause.
We want to get this worked out as quickly as we possibly can. And that's why you see the word pause. In other words, you want to hold off for a bit and very well may go back to that, maybe with some conditions or maybe not. But we want to leave that up to the FDA and the CDC to investigate this carefully.
And that seems to be the big thing, Allison. They want to make certain that all of the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed on this. And that way, then they can tell people with some certainty that they have had a full investigation of the concerns.
So, Rahema, we've heard from folks who wanted to get their shots today. We've heard from the White House task force. What is Johnson & Johnson saying about all this?
Johnson & Johnson essentially is saying that they want to make certain that there is transparency. In fact, we have a portion of the statement that they released today. I'm going to read it for you, Allison. It says that at present, no clear causal relationship has been established between these rare events and the Janssen COVID-19 vaccine. We continue to work closely with experts and regulators to assess the data. Once again, they are saying that they want transparency. They are clearly indicating to people that that's the only way that they can expect that folks who want to get vaccinated can feel confident about it if all of their results are shared with regulators, and any investigation that is necessary, that investigation is carried out, and that information then is also shared with the public. Allison?
Pause in the J&J vaccine, making it challenging for some folks trying to get that shot at the Javits Center today. Rahema Ellis, thank you so much. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine pause giving anti-vaxxers a bit of a boost today. NBCNews.com senior reporter Brandy Zadrozny here now. Brandy, you have been tracking anti-vaccine forums online for some time now. How is today's news adding fuel to their fire?
Hi, Allison. Yeah, this is 6 cases of rare blood clots out of 7 million vaccines. But basically, it's Christmas to the anti-vaccination community and the people who lead it. You know, I talked to misinformation researchers this morning, a lot of them. Joan Donovan, who leads the Shorenstein Center at Harvard Kennedy School, told me that every unexpected news about vaccines is an opportunity to piggyback medical misinformation into the public conversation. And, you know, really, that's just what we're seeing from anti-vaccination people right now. We're seeing some of the same kinds of narratives that we saw when the AstraZeneca rollout was paused in Europe. And the misinformation follows a couple of lanes. You know, the first one is that the pause of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is somehow evidence that this vaccine is totally unsafe, and therefore all vaccines are totally unsafe. We're also seeing conspiracy theories that the CDC is somehow lying to us about the number of injuries. And then the third thing we're seeing is that really continued narratives that these vaccines haven't been safety tested, which again is totally untrue. One of the biggest anti-vaccine profiteers is this guy, Del Bigtree. He runs a multi-million-dollar anti-vaccination organization. He has this show, and he responded very giddily to the AstraZeneca news last week.
So, Brandy, there's certainly reason for concern here and to pay attention to what's going on. And people who have questions, that's legitimate. But then you've got what you're talking about, this whole other side of this, which is based on COVID misinformation, vaccine conspiracy. So what are social media platforms doing to crack down on what's not just concerns, what's really problematic and falls into that misinformation conspiracy category?
It's hard because, like you said, this is a real news event. You know, we are seeing Facebook and Twitter put labels like they said they would. They're doing fact checks. You know, they have all these rules against blatant misinformation. And they're doing that work still. But the Johnson & Johnson news is just bigger than the platforms. You know, it's a real news event. People have real questions. And you can see real people having these discussions in local Facebook groups. And, you know, we have to let those organic conversations play out. The platforms think that's healthy. So do health advocates.
Brandy, at the White House presser today, Jeff Zients took a question about how this pause could increase vaccine hesitancy. Here he is.
You know, there's tremendous track record, as Dr. Fauci has talked about, with tens of millions of doses of Pfizer and Moderna. The FDA acting the way they did today shows that they are indeed the gold standard, and I think that should reassure the American public that they will be very diligent and conservative in how they approach the vaccines.
In spite of all that, if you're someone who was really nervous about getting a vaccine or who maybe wasn't sure what they were going to do, something like this doesn't necessarily help. What are other medical professionals saying about the anti-vax movement given the J&J pause?
Yeah, the public health advocates I talked to, they are concerned for sure. Like the woman that was just in the last segment, there are people that now might not get vaccinated right away, but public health advocates are still pretty, they have faith in the ability of the public health messengers to relay that this pause is good, transparency is good, and that the pause really communicates how honest and safe public health agencies are being here. Dr. Ashish Jha, who's the dean of Brown University's School of Public Health, he said, you know, I know that lots of people will cause more vaccine hesitancy and more harm than good. I'm honestly not so sure. My sense is confidence comes from people believing that we have vigorous systems in place that take adverse events seriously.
Some great thoughts there and wise advice from him. I know we have him on our various platforms regularly, and he always has such great medical wisdom. And Brandy, a big thanks to you. You always help us separate concern from conspiracy, and we appreciate it. The defense in the Derek Chauvin murder trial calling their first witnesses today. The prosecution resting their case this morning after 11 days of testimony. NBC News correspondent Megan Fitzgerald is in Minneapolis. Megan, the first defense witness, Scott Creighton, he's a retired Minneapolis police officer. Tell us some of his backstory and what he said in court today.
So, Allison, what the defense was trying to do with this witness was to try and prove to the jury that George Floyd died of an overdose. This is the officer who arrested George Floyd back in 2019. And the defense says that he ingested several opioid pills before he was taken into police custody. And so they were using this witness to try and play that situation up. They also heard from a paramedic who arrived on scene and checked the vitals of Mr. Floyd and suggested that he go to the hospital because he had admitted to her that he had ingested several pills. And so what the defense seems to be doing here is trying to draw that parallel. This is what happened in a similar situation in 2019. You can believe that that's what happened here. We know that pills were in his system. He likely ingested them just before police arrived and died from an overdose. So it's the opportunity for the defense to try and plant that seed of doubt. And it certainly was on display this afternoon, Allison.
Megan, who else took the stand today?
So someone that stands out is this use of force expert that the defense called. This man testified that what we see in that video, that 9 minutes and 29 seconds, was not a use of deadly force. He believes those actions were justified. I want you to listen to this back and forth he had with the defense attorney in court today. Take a listen.
Have you formed opinions in this particular case to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
I have.
And can you just briefly overview your opinions in this particular case?
I felt that Derek Chauvin was justified and was acting with objective reasonableness, following Minneapolis Police Department policy and current standards of law enforcement in his interactions with Mr. Floyd.
Now, of course, the prosecution pushing back here, playing the video, showing the moments that Derek Chauvin's knee was on George Floyd's neck, and clearly drawing a circle around the moment when his toe lifts up off the ground, asking this witness if he believes that that's a moment when more pressure was added. This witness testified that he didn't know. But again, that video was played twice for the jurors to see, Allison.
Megan, do you know at this stage how many witnesses the defense plans to call or how long their side of this case may go?
Yeah, it's a good question. And to give you some perspective, let me check my time here. 3:15 local time, central time here, and the defense has already called 6 witnesses to the witness stand. According to the judge, the defense could wrap its case by Thursday. So this is moving along.
Yeah, they are really moving quite quickly. Megan, thanks so much for your reporting again. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Dante Wright's parents demanding that Officer Kim Potter be held accountable for killing their son. His mom breaking down in tears, remembering the moment she learned that he died.
3 or 4 seconds went by. I tried calling it back to back to back because I didn't know what was going on. And I never imagined this is what was going to happen. I just thought maybe he was being arrested. And then when I called back, the girl that he had in the car answered the phone, and it was on a FaceTime. And she said, she was crying and screaming, and she said that they shot him. And she pointed the phone towards the driver's seat, and my son was laying there, unresponsive.
My Lord.
That was the last time that I seen my son. That's the last time I heard from my son, and I have had no explanation since then.
NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky's in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Morgan, Wright's family joining George Floyd's family and their lawyer Ben Crump at that news conference today. What else did they say?
It was an emotional moment, Allison. Both families had a chance to go up there and share what was on their hearts, what's been felt over the past 48 hours. And you need to keep in mind that this is a community that's still healing from the loss of George Floyd. I spoke to a gentleman at the vigil for Dante Wright, and he says that this only exacerbates the pain that everyone still feels. And I asked him how much longer before you can move on from this. He said he didn't know. And so each family standing side by side essentially made a statement in that they want permanent change to come. They don't want violence to be the answer in this case. And as everyone saw whenever George Floyd's life was lost, there was a push for change. And they hope that that is only growing louder now with the unfortunate loss of Dante Wright.
Morgan, around the same time today, Brooklyn Center's mayor announced that both the officer who shot Daunte Wright and the police chief are no longer with the department. Here he is.
As of this morning, we have the resignation. We have received a resignation, a letter from Officer Kim Porter. And in addition to that, we have also received a letter of resignation from the police chief.
Morgan, what do we know about Officer Potter's decision to resign, and what does it mean for this investigation?
Yeah, Allison, we know that Potter herself has not come out and said anything publicly, so we just have this resignation letter that she offered earlier today as her words so far since this fatal incident took place. And the gist of that letter is Potter saying that she feels it's in the best interest of her community, of her departments, to step aside and leave at this point in time, making that resignation effective immediately. We also know that in addition to Potter, the police chief is also resigning here, who has headed up this department for some time inside this building behind me. And we're seeing real-time change happen within the structure of Brooklyn Center, because it was just yesterday that the mayor, the city manager of his duties, who oversees the police department, that is now the job of the mayor after a recent city council decision. So change is in play here as far as what Potter's resignation means for the investigation. It essentially won't have much of an impact. That is continuing to go forth with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, meaning that she's just no longer on administrative leave at this point.
Got it. Morgan, there were protesters and police back in the streets last night, second night in a row. Is the community expecting more of that tonight?
You know, unfortunately, it's kind of have to wait and see. When the sun goes down, that's certainly when these type of things start to happen. This is the area that was the flashpoint between police and protesters last night, right outside of the department. We watched that crowd go to several hundred strong.
Mais ouais, dans le fond, c'est ça. Rançon, il me dit, oh non, d'après moi, cette semaine, il va y avoir une grosse drop. Là, puis j'étais genre, pas sûr de ça, moi. Mais on va voir. Évidemment, ça a juste monté. Il y a de la supériorité.
All right, Morgan Chesky in Brooklyn Center, thank you.
Pardon, CN?
All right, let's bring in David Henderson. He is a civil rights attorney, a former prosecutor, and also a CNBC contributor. David, great to have you on the show. Let's talk about how the Brooklyn Center shooting and the protest there could affect the Derek Chauvin trial. Daunte Wright's family joining with the Floyd family and their attorney Ben Crump for a news conference today. Here's Crump.
Ouais, je sais. Juste que moi, je m'en calisse parce que je suis dans un cercle d'officier. Si quelqu'un rentre pour me dire de quoi, je dis je suis un set d'ordre.
Should be killed by police. It was during this pinnacle trial of Derek Chauvin, and we believe with everything in our heart, Katie, that police would be on their best behavior, that they would exercise the greatest standard of care. But regrettably, 2 days ago, we saw Daunte Wright.
So, David, let me ask you, we saw the Floyd family there, we see the Wright family there, standing behind the same lawyer. How does that overlap? How could that overlap impact the Derek Chauvin murder trial?
Well, Allison, I agree with what Attorney Crump said 100%. If anything should not have happened during the George Floyd trial, not the George Floyd trial, the Derek Chauvin trial for the murder of George Floyd, it shouldn't have been the murder of another unarmed black man. Now, how it affects the trial itself is probably going to be very limited because the defense attorney has already raised concern about what's going on in light of the fact that Derek Chauvin is on trial. And Judge Cahill has heard it. He's indicated he's not going to sequester the jury right now. He's not going to postpone or delay the trial. I don't expect his opinion there to change. What's good to remember is that in addition to the trial of Derek Chauvin, American policing is also on trial. That's where Daunte Wright's killing is going to have a huge impact.
Dans le fond, man,
How
c'est
difficult
ça, man.
is it going to
Son
be?
gramme,
I
son
have a
gramme
hard
qu'il
time
voulait, mais il va se le mettre
imagining
dans le
how
cul,
a
man.
jury in this city at this time with all this going on is
Vince?
able to purely stay focused on the trial at hand, the Derek Chauvin trial, and
Approuve le
not
message.
listen to outside influences to the news. You've been in a courtroom far
Sûr qu'il
more
va
than I
aimer ça en
have in an
plus, man.
experienced capacity. How challenging is this for a jury to deal with what's going on, not only in Minnesota, but in our country right now?
Allison, I think it depends on who we're talking
quand
about.
il
I think
dit
it'd be
fucking
challenging for
Carmen
me.
qui smuggle
I
de la
think it'd be
drogue, c'est
challenging
genre,
for
bro.
you. But remember, there's
Effectivement.
one juror in this trial who'd never seen any of the videos connected to what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd.
Yeah.
That's unimaginable for me. I don't know what kind of world you're living in where you had right? And then other people had seen limited portions of it. Like I've seen the videos multiple times. And so someone who's coming from a perspective like that is coming from such a different place than I am. It's really hard to imagine. Now, with that in mind, I think part of Judge Cahill's point is this is something that's going to be in the national media on an ongoing basis. And honestly, even if you have strong opinions about what happened to Daunte Wright, that doesn't necessarily impact your ability to be fair and impartial in Derek Chauvin's trial.
David, the officer who shot Daunte Wright has resigned. The chief is saying that she grabbed her gun, that officer, instead of her taser, calling this an accident. Even if this was a gross mistake, what does Minnesota law say here?
This is a hard one for me, Allison, and I'm going to be honest with you. It's a hard one for me because in my heart, this is murder. And if you or I was holding a taser and did to Daunte Wright what the officer did, it would be murder. But I think that under Minnesota law, it's going to be very difficult to charge this officer. In fact, I don't expect to see charges for this officer. That doesn't mean that what she did wasn't wrong.
Mauvaise expérience générale
Is inadequate because when you
en achetant des choses
wrongfully kill someone who didn't deserve to be killed, there should be a serious consequence for that. But our laws have codified police abuse, and they have enabled this type of behavior. And I think it's time for us to reevaluate some of those policies, including whether or not police officers need to be carrying tasers.
David, the defense in the Chauvin trial started their case today. Here's Minneapolis Park Police Officer Peter Chang. He was testifying about the
I do think that there is a lot breaking down. I absolutely do not think January 6th is the high water. Of course not. Do I think something like this will happen again at some point in the next 10 years? Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, tabarnak, GTH, man. Il va dropper, il va avoir un trade là-dessus bientôt, man.
If a political system does not come down hard on this kind of anti-constitutional, anti-democratic,
J'essaie, mais il va dropper puis il va remonter.
The results of an election.
Ah, ça slingshot de l'autre bord.
You're just going to keep doing it. When people say this is the end of the Roman Empire, that's when I say I don't think that that's true. This is not a situation where we are.
Ouais, je te dis pas de l'acheter live au market. Je te dis genre de checker pour mettre peut-être un buy order plus bas puis quand ça va remonter, si ça break out, ben big money.
The United States as an entity will continue on. But when you're talking about the political system, what does American democracy look like? What does representative government look like? Participatory government.
Ok, c'est pour ça que tu trades du BTC.
The Romans had. The Romans, for 500 years, the Romans had like a fairly participatory system because those guys did still have to troll for votes. They still needed to win elections in order to get ahead. So I think that there are things that we can talk about in terms of the political system transitioning from representative democracy to an autocratic regime. The United States of America, which is of course modeled on the Roman Republican system, has institutions just like Rome did with the consulship and with the tribunate, where if you just start vesting power and authority in one part of that system, You can keep the window dressing of a House of Representatives and a Senate and a Supreme Court, but we see this in sort of constitutional dictatorships with the window dressing of democracy, but actually it's just an autocracy. The American political system is well primed to move towards the office of the presidency and the executive branch. The institutional framework is there for that office and the White House to become something like a truly imperial presidency, not just as a metaphor, but truly an imperial presidency that will come when these ambitious people and these ambitious politicians really just throw elections out the window and it all just becomes a power grab free-for-all, where power is all that matters and nothing else does. And you take that mentality, which I do see floating around out there. The only thing that matters is power and winning, and an institution like the presidency that is well primed to become an autocratic entity. You put those two things together, and you've got the Roman Republic. What happened there was it got down to a point where ambitious men who wanted power stopped caring about the various rules, norms, laws that govern their behavior. What happens if you lose an election? What happens if you don't get command of a legion? What happens if your rival is going to put forward a popular bill and give them more votes and more clients than you're going to have, make them more popular than you? How do you respond to that? And for 500 years, they mostly just kind of did it in a round-robin rotational system where everybody was kind of happy. And then round about the 50 or 60 years before Caesar, right, all of that started breaking down and they started escalating with each other. Rome held elections every single year. There is an election. It's going to go against some candidate. That candidate has on retainer sort of armed gangs. And they said, I'm probably going to lose this vote. So on the day of the election, I need you to come in with your gang and rough people up and beat them up. They had their voting urns, right? Like literal physical voting urns that you would vote into, and they would knock them over basically to wreck the election itself. I'm not going to accept that my rival got command of this potentially lucrative campaign in Greece. I want that campaign for myself. So I'm going to send gangs to try to push his supporters out of the assembly so I can win the vote. After the revolution of 1830, there is a moment where has to go out and stop a mob going to try to swarm into the National Assembly building because they think that the people inside the National Assembly building are writing a new constitution for France that's more conservative than they would have preferred. And so you did actually have like a mob coming in to stop the national legislature from doing what it was doing. Those things I see happening right now in the United States.
What the fuck, je comprends pas, man.
We all saw something like that on January the 6th. Because really what January 6th was about was trying to
sur son trading view,
from one party to another, from one candidate to another.
Je vois pas c'est quoi ça FRB, man.
And they're just trying to get in the middle of that and use force and intimidation to stop that process, which is a very different thing from the more famous moments that you see in.
Non, mais j'ai cliqué sur son lien, hein. Et ça me montre une chart.
This is
like fucking de ligne en bas.
In American history is not unique at all in terms of world history.
Okay.
When I have looked back at, all through revolutions and all through the history of Rome, the unique factor about Trump is not what he tried to do.
Tabarnak, ces lignes touchent tout le temps le bottom. What the fuck?
That he's a bad ruler because people ask me, is he like Louis XVI or is he like, Tsar Nicholas? The answer is those guys were actually, in my opinion, better rulers and actually better politicians, frankly, than Donald Trump was, and those are historically bad rulers. You kind of have to look at what was going on with some of the teenage emperors in Roman history in terms of just how kind of nonchalant they were with the power that they had at their disposal. And not like sort of the excessive horrors that we know from like TV, like with Caligula or with Nero.
Shall have a new name. Neropolis, city of Nero.
But just in terms of temperament,
Camille, man, he become a trader by trade, man.
So
what the fuck?
What does American Caesar look like, or the American Sulla, or the American Marius? Like somebody who's going to come along and really push the system over and grab a hold of it. I don't know that we've seen exactly what the book looks like. But Donald Trump has shown us plain as day how he's absolutely going to be willing to go along with that if and when it does come along.
GG, well played, man. Je pense que j'ai manqué mon trade. Ouais, j'ai manqué mon trade.
Certain images can sum up a city. The poor riversides of Calcutta, the undernourished children, and its dilapidated buildings. But for the last 20 years, scenes from Indian cities have been shaken by the arrival of American-style shopping centers, like this one, filled by Western brands.
Did I miss my trade though?
Move. Make road.
Did I miss it? Or am I fucking right? That's what we're gonna see on the next episode of Trading with Crypto Knight.
Welcome to the paradise of shopping and gastronomy.
Ouais, genre all time, ben 62, 7-2, quelque chose, là. 7 quelque chose.
Three Western
Pas là, là.
fast food brands are about to open. Subway, KFC, and soon Domino's Pizza. The brand's 600th point of sale in India.
Tu me dis de canceller, puis d'annuler ma dernière, c'est ça?
59 rupees, okay. 59 rupees,
0.30.
80 cents. It's a Western product at a very low
0.30.
price. The main sales argument of the brand. And there are some even cheaper.
It's sûr? Cancel? Je vais buy là soon.
And ma'am, the main thing is like we are introducing this pizza is only at 49 now. That is the thing, ma'am. So that's why it's most popular. The menu of 49 is like is a dream comes true. I think so, ma'am. For myself, it's and for the guest also.
Industrial food is still the stuff of dreams
Je viens de
in
buy, hein.
developing countries, and they are promising markets.
Je vais buy un 9.
In France and Europe, this fairy tale is less of a success. Safety campaigns against
Non, je peux pas vendre un 5-7, je vais avoir 2-3-9. Je suis pas comme toi, man. Je fais un point 15.
You can help to protect your health.
Ça pour 2 piastres, man.
In 2004, a law was voted to limit the effects of food marketing.
Depuis quand ça drop un peu plus? C'est ça. That's a green market right there.
For good health, avoid eating too much sugar, fat, or salt. Under pressure, industries reduced the quantities of sugar, salt, and
Am I minus 20 already?
they still find ways to get around this obstacle.
J'ai fait un x100 et j'ai acheté un BTC.
Brands are less regulated, they target new consumers. In countries in the south,
Ça continue à baisser, man.
even further, even going into schools.
Je niaisais parce que j'ai fait un x100 puis j'ai acheté un BTC. We don't like to go around.
Of the fast food giants.
In India, we moved to no food to bad food.
There's resistance on the low. Oh. Oh. And your wallet.
Rio de Janeiro, some images always come to mind. Copacabana Beach, sculpted bodies, easy
Je vois du monde en f... What the fuck? Les marins sont bizarres, man.
These common themes are often exploited by Western brands.
Les gars de Garda, man.
For fizzy drinks. Football, favelas.
Ils sont bizarres, man, être en chemise avec des pantalons propres, man. Fucking 40 degrés, man. Des marins, man. T'avais raison, ça drop un peu plus, mais c'était à expect. Et anyway, c'est mon premier trade, fait que j'ai pas mis beaucoup de cash. Hein. Because I don't trust myself enough. I got trust issues.
Fizzy drink brands cannot consider themselves blameless.
Excessive marketing is one of the main reasons for the rise in obesity here. Children become addicted from a very early age, and then it's much harder to wean them off it. They drink a lot of fizzy drinks before the age of 2.
T'as dit que ça va monter?
Parents give this type of product to their children because they believe that if adverts and businesses promote them so much, it can't be harmful. Brazil is the 3rd biggest market in the world for Coca-Cola.
Oh, il y a une petite pente vers le haut. C'est ce que je vois.
The truth is that I love fizzy drink. I'm addicted. We drink it nearly every day at home, and also when I go out.
C'est de la résistance. Je dirais qu'à mon point d'achat, man. C'est tout le temps de même, man.
It's my grandson who likes them a lot.
Tout le temps, man.
Big bottles are for me and the little ones for him. He takes them straight out of the fridge and it's
Ouais, quelqu'un qui achète pour 100 000, là. C'est hot.
Crisps.
Ouais, fuck you, toi et puis ta résistance.
In Brazil, there is no law around food marketing, so brands don't hesitate to canvas for clients from school age. Belo Horizonte, the 6th
Moins
biggest
$6.
city in the country.
Fuck. I'ma lose hundreds of dollars. Anyway, mon fucking liquidation price est à 49 000. Correct.
And this public college are not.
Et le temps.
But it has no budget for extracurricular activities.
Oh, good.
But everything could soon change, thanks to a famous red brand.
Let's go.
Uh-oh.
Go on.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
These 14-year-old children will participate in a
Je dirais que ça va monter pour me redonner du moral, là, parce que là, je casse. Là. Ça va dropper en tabarnak, là, si ça pète la résistance. Là.
The winning school gets 15,000 reals, that's right?
Ah, shit. Ah, fuck.
Yes, 5,000 reals.
Well, I guess it's time to dump.
Footballs, equipment for volleyball. Whatever the result, it will be good for the school.
Moi qui voulais faire un petit trade.
She even has the official title of
Je vais pas payer les fees.
Unthinkable in France. College students join 4,000 other teenagers in the largest auditorium. And of course, the party begins with a Coke.
Pourquoi ça me fait rire en tabarnak le monde qui pose sur Facebook des affaires genre « Quand le monde connaîtra le sens de cette image, ils se rebelleront. » Genre un doute qui fouette le monde, après ça il y a un gars qui se lève, il continue à fouetter, là, il y a 3 gars qui se lèvent, il continue à fouetter, puis là tout le monde est levé. Des photos de même là. Attends là, je vais ouvrir Facebook puis genre ça va être la première fois que je vais voir.
That day, the brand is everywhere, and yet it's a school event.
You spend a lot of money on this operation?
Yes, we've invested a lot, because the goal is to make the children dream, which is the best gift that we can give them. Well, I don't mean children, but teenagers from 12 to 19 years, and who are...
Est-ce que ça dit que ça va monter ton Michael Cypher, man?
Don't be stressed. Breathe.
Merci. On monte la morale.
To go on stage. Thanks to the well-known fizzy drink brand, they are able to get their moment of glory.
A blade, no my yay. No my yay. Ouais, c'est qu'ils sont pareils, man. Promener en chemise, man. Pantalon propre avec un BVN. Chris, ça fait 40 degrés dehors, man. Oh, lisse. Attends, toi, t'aimes ça de lever le matin puis payer, hein? Tabarnak.
Everybody here knows it.
J'ai hâte de jouer au nouveau Battlefield, man. Battlefield 6, ça? C'est Modern Day, là. Enfin, ils ont compris, là. Il va y avoir des extreme weather affect gameplay, man. What the fuck? Ça va être cool, man. J'espère qu'il y a du même qualité que BF3 puis BF4, man. Ouais, c'est les... Oh, Christ. Ouais. Ah, t'es pas un gars de Battlefield, hein, toi? Ok. Charland, lui, il dit que le meilleur Battlefield, c'est Battlefield 5, man. Peux-tu, genre, on va-tu le beat up? Genre World War II, le dernier est sorti, là? Le dernier qui est sorti, dans le fond. Le meilleur, c'est Battlefield 4. Ou 3. On s'entend. Même si les Bad Company étaient excellents. Don't get me wrong, les Bad Company étaient très bons. Ouais, le 2 était insane, là.
Anna Marina Fazoli tries to prevent junk food from entering her school, a daily battle to protect her pupils aged 3 to 14.
Ouais. 4 aussi, il était cool. 4... Ouais. À cause que le 2, c'est genre... Le premier, c'est à cause que c'est la nouvelle entry du Gendra, fait que c'est pas un test, mais tu sais, on s'entend. Genre, tu sais, comme... Je savais pas trop comment s'y prendre. Bad Company 2, ils ont juste build up là-dessus. Les 3, ils ont rendu ça moderne.
At our request, the headmistress contacted McDonald's by telephone to get Ronald the Clown to come. And a few days later...
Hey, what's up, kids? Everything going okay?
Hello, welcome. Wow,
The gunplay?
We pass ourselves off as pupils' parents.
Hello?
Ouais, mais moi, ce que j'aimais bien, là, c'est la map dans le 4, c'est la prison, là.
Everybody is here. I want everybody to clap their hands so I can make my entrance. Music.
Ouais, c'est ce que je veux dire. Ouais. Mais peut-être qu'il était dans le 3 aussi, là, parce que je sais qu'ils ont recycled beaucoup de maps du 3, là. Genre le métro, là. Le métro, me semble que c'était dans le 3, là. Qui était une esti d'insane map, man, pour les SMG players, man. Ben, en fait, c'est ça qu'il y a dans Battlefield, c'est que tu peux jouer partout, n'importe comment, genre. Comme si t'as des skills, là. À part si t'as un SMG puis tu joues long range, là. On s'entend, là. T'as des skills, là, tu peux jouer pas mal n'importe comment, man. Genre, si toi, ton fun, là, c'est d'être dans un LMG couché à terre, man, puis juste de griller une porte, man. Tu peux le faire, là. Si tu risques de faire beaucoup de kills. Puis de t'en faire fragger.
Goodbye. Goodbye.
Does that make you want to eat at McDonald's?
Yes.
Are you going to ask your parents?
Yes.
What do you want?
I want nuggets, fries,
Ah, t'es dans un long, toi?
and a fizzy drink. A big fizzy drink.
And you, when you get out of here, what are you going to ask your
Ah,
parents?
t'as acheté à la même place que moi, man, quasiment. 200$ de moins, excuse. Ouais.
This type of show has already taken place in hundreds of schools.
Ah.
Does the brand accept
T'en combien, toi?
underhand
33063.
We asked
Ouais.
McDonald's Brazil, and we received this reply by email.
Mais c'est pas grave. Ça va remonter. Au pire des cas, je vais même avoir le temps de bouffer, man.
And who is that?
Which clown? The clown from McDonald's. Yes, it's Ronald.
He already came to the crash I was at before.
I'm in love with the shape of you.
There is no law
Ben moi je vends en 63 239 là. J'ai pas vraiment ouais. Ben moi c'est à cause que j'ai acheté en 1.9. Je me fais un petit point 15 hein. C'est pas grand chose hein. Somebody like me. Come on. I mean, if you don't mind me, say boy, let's not talk too much.
As a precaution, we recommend not allowing these shows in schools. The most effective
Hey man, tu veux-tu que je mime, que je mette 25$ dans un nouveau account, genre comme on the side là? Que je fasse un x100 dans BNB, hein?
A child doesn't separate the
Très
message
drôle,
of an
man.
advert from another message.
Ouais. Il y a un gros volume vers le haut. Hein.
Here's what we filmed this morning.
If we collect the water we use to rinse the
Mon tout.
washing, we can reuse it to water the plants and wash the floor, right?
I feel completely helpless. I've sent recommendations, but apparently the Secretary of State for Health hasn't followed up, despite 2 letters to the
Fait que
ministry.
t'allais avoir des couilles puis le vendre à la même place que moi, man.
In Brazil, the food giants count on the weakness of the public administration. In other developing countries, they offer products that are much worse for public health.
J'ai acheté pour 2500, ok? Fait que fuck you. Les gars. C'est que le fucking volume qui monte encore, là, genre un autre 20 millions. Je veux dire 4. Je checkais avant. Je checkais juste avant.
India, 1 billion.
Je suis jamais satisfait. T'as pas du gain.
A priority market for Western brands looking for openings.
Moi, je suis pas satisfait parce que je suis encore dans le rouge.
Healthy and good value. To compete, European and American companies play on the majority of consumers' lack of information. In this huge shopping center in Calcutta, among the restaurants, it's a brand of fried chicken that has the highest turnover. The American brand has changed its recipe for its Indian sauce, spicy, and it's worked. The restaurant attracts 3,000 customers on average per day.
Hey, j'ai une question pour toi, man. Si, admettons, j'achète Maker, ben genre, tu sais, un vrai long comme on fait, puis je le sell market, là, est-ce que je vais genre... Ouais, est-ce que je vais payer genre comme le full buy plus sell de fees ou juste le sell? Que je vais pogner le gros fee?
Not here. Only fizzy drinks or juices, but the consumers don't complain.
To me, it's clean, hygiene. I can see everything being prepared. I haven't been sick ever. That's why I trust it. Tastes really good.
Ouais. Ouais.
It's a little healthy and it is less oily.
The managers are
Okay.
aware that their
C'est
customers
juste
are
ma
lacking
question.
correct information, but aren't authorized to say anything. We record this conversation discreetly.
Ça va monter, ça va monter plus. Ça va monter plus. I'm a motherfucking star boy.
We are health conscious, but not up to like Europe and US people. So we are becoming aware, but the level is still in.
Je sais pas c'est quoi tu regardes là, mais le gars il a une tête de gland, man.
The current paradox is that while some Indians still suffer
C'est
from
ça de même.
malnutrition, another part of the population, the middle class, is suffering from an obesity epidemic. 30% of adolescents are overweight, a figure that has doubled in 5 years.
Am I going in the green? Is that what I see?
Suraj is 15, and at 5'5", weighs 15 stone 8 pounds. The teenager is a fast.
Ah, c'est à quoi j'ai pas mis save that money. Non.
We have like 4 days of it. We go out with friends and family, so we have all these pizzas and stuff and everything.
we enjoy our life.
Would you say you're addicted to it?
I don't think so.
Finalement, tu les aimes-tu, mes écouteurs ou pas?
Addicted is different thing. Like, I'm not doing anything else. Like, I'm not smoking or I'm not drinking. So that is called addicted. This is not addicted.
Ben, t'es boosté à 200% là, honnêtement, là. Tu parles pas fort, là.
What to do now?
What do you mean what to do?
Ben, toi, tu peux pas te booster ou t'es déjà au max?
But you don't want to give up eating.
But now I have to give up now for the operation.
Ben, check, va dans Discord, en paramètres, dans voix vidéo, puis check voir si ton micro il est sensibilisé au max.
Specializes in stomach surgery.
Oh.
Serious operations for extreme cases. 300 patients per month.
Non, vraiment pas.
More and more
C'est la même affaire.
adolescents.
Ah, là, c'est chill. Là, c'est chill.
So you have about 54 kg extra weight which you need to lose, which will start from tomorrow. After a month,
Est-ce quelqu'un qui est cogné ou c'est genre...
join your PT exercise and you can be a very tall, handsome boy.
Ouais, là, c'est
He's
chill.
already pre-diabetic, his hormones are changed. We see that his estrogens in the body are becoming more prominent, giving rise to gynecomastia and feminine type of deposition of fat. In addition to that, he has psychosis.
Dis-moi pas, je vais le pogner là pendant 2 heures encore.
No control on my mouth, so.
J'ai dit, man, c'est le premier trade qui fait chier.
TV, advertisement, media also
Tout le
play a
temps,
lot
tout le
of
temps.
role in promoting kids to see some film
J'ai une-
star, some celebrity advertising.
Hein, ton stream a été suspended, man.
Correct.
Encore?
And all this with some.
Dis. Tu es capable de leur starter?
Ah, ça c'est le second strike là. Fuck. Voir que je peux pas mettre des... C'est dans mes chiens.
T'as déjà 2 strikes, man.
Je vais aller... je vais streamer sur Twitch, man. Fuck.
Bon.